This is Mastercaster, taking you from zero to podcasting hero. And now here is your host, Neil Butler.
Let's start by understanding what a podcast is. You may already be a regular podcast listener and understand how a podcast works, but even if you do, it might be worth investing a few minutes to listen to this episode. I want to make sure that everyone is starting from the same place and that you are familiar with terminology that I'll be using in other episodes. A podcast is a series of audio files recorded in an episodic format and distributed by so-called podcast stores or via a really simple syndication or RSS feed. There are a couple of key points in there. Firstly, the podcast is a series of episodes. If you're thinking of creating your own podcast, you should acknowledge that there's a commitment to an ongoing series involved. The frequency and duration of each episode is something we'll discuss in a future Mastercaster episode, but take it as read that if you're not prepared to continue the production of content for the foreseeable future, you're probably wasting your time in creating a podcast. Secondly, a podcast is an audio medium. In some ways, it's the on-demand equivalent of radio. There are certainly video-based equivalents, and these are typically described as vodcasts. Just to be clear, Mastercaster will only be presenting the skills and knowledge that you require to create an audio-based podcast. The name podcast was first used in 2004 by combining the words iPod and broadcasting, although since then, the opportunity to listen to podcasts has extended to other portable media players, including phones, tablets, and computers. Typically, the people who listen to podcasts use the services of one or more so-called podcast stores. They download a podcast player app onto their device or devices of choice, for example, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, which links their device to one of these stores. They can then browse the store or search for a specific podcast to listen to. There are a couple of advantages that podcasts have over radio. One, podcasting is on demand. You get to choose when you want to listen to an episode of a podcast. When you listen to the radio, the content is presented according to the radio station scheduled. This means that radio is good for as it happens content, such as news and sporting events, but for other content that is not as it happens, podcasting provides that flexibility. And two, podcast episodes can be downloaded onto your device for consumption at a later time. This means that you are not reliant on internet or radio coverage to allow you to listen to a podcast episode. Many listeners use their commute time to catch up on new episodes of their favourite podcast. By downloading episodes before they leave home, they don't waste their mobile data when listening live and don't need to ensure that they're in an area of good mobile reception. A couple of other things are worth noting at this point. None of the mainstream stores allow podcasts to be sold. The content is available to download at no cost to the listener. Unlike an author or musician who can sell their books or songs and earn money directly from these stores, a podcaster cannot use the stores to monetize their podcast. That said, listeners can subscribe to a podcast, which means that they'll be advised when new episodes are available and can have them auto-downloaded onto their device. The term subscriber has therefore been a little misleading for some people. In other scenarios, such as magazines, online newspapers, etc., a subscriber is someone who pays to access content. Subscribing to a podcast does not involve payment. It just means that you'll be told whenever a new episode is available. This is worth remembering when you start to think about how you will promote your podcast. It may be worth reminding your potential audience that subscribing is free. For those who are new to podcasts, that might be a hurdle that otherwise stops them from becoming a regular listener. In the next episode, we'll start to think about your podcast strategy.
This has been another episode of Mastercaster. For more information about Mastercaster or the other services provided by Untypical Media, please visit www.mastercaster.co or follow Mastercaster on Facebook and LinkedIn.